Stay tuned for the first Just Homebrew Brew Day. Welcome back to Just Homebrew. I want to introduce you to a new series called the Just Homebrew Brew Day. Now, this is a fun series where I'm going to share learning moments with you. I'm going to recap my brew day. And so this past weekend, I had my first brew day. We brewed an American Stout. I'm going to introduce you to a buddy of mine, Matt. We're going to go over a new system of mine, the Anvil Foundry. So let's go ahead and walk through the brew day. So first off, this is Matt. I got him into brewing a few years ago, and now he does not stop asking me to brew. You're going to see him a little bit more over the next few months. He's actually a chemist, and he's going to come and talk about water chemistry. We're brewing 6.5 gallons of an American Stout recipe I put together. The alcohol by volume should be right around 5.8%. The original gravity will be 1.063, and the final gravity should be right around 1.019. The ingredients include 1 pound of roasted barley, 1 pound of chocolate malt, 13 pounds of pale malt 2-row US, 1 pound of caramel crystal malt, 2 ounces of Golding's East Kent, 1 ounce of Willamette, 1 ounce of Centennial, and for the yeast we have the Imperial Darkness. A little bit of an update. We've got the water mash coming up to temperature. We have the grains crushed. So next we're going to be mashing in. Let's do it. Let's brew. Let's brew. There were no surprises during mashing. It was nice having the grain bed on the floor and not having to lift the grains on top of the table. And one tip, make sure you cover your control panel. I thought I could get away without covering it, but we did end up spilling mash on top of the buttons, so it's a good idea to cover this before you start. One great thing about brew days, people just start showing up with more beer. This is Eric. Eric is actually another teacher, and he knows a lot about yeast. He's going to show up in another episode later this year and talk about how yeast can change the profiles of beer.
Yes, that's good. Yeah.
It did not take long for the Anvil Foundry to bring the water up to mash temperature. As soon as we hit temperature, I started the pump and started recirculating the mash over the grains. Not long after that, we did run into a clogged pump, so I broke out the instruction manual to see what happened. I was supposed to let the grains set for a period of time. I was supposed to stir the top of the grains about midway through. After a little finagling, I was able to unclog the pump. I'll just have to make sure I follow the instructions next time. Removing the grain basket was a piece of cake. However, I did find it was difficult to see where the water level was in the Anvil Foundry once the grain basket was resting on the side of the foundry. It was getting late, so we tried to move the Anvil Foundry inside underneath a window in my garage, but we quickly found out the steam was too much without a fan. So we threw the Anvil Foundry back outside and started adding all our hop additions. A few minutes before the boil ended, we threw the immersion chiller inside the foundry for a quick sanitation and then moved the foundry indoors to run cold water through the immersion chiller. I was really happy how fast this immersion chiller cooled down the wort. I think it took about 20 minutes to come down to, I believe, 70 to 75 degrees. We ran into another stuck pump when trying to whirlpool around the immersion chiller. I'm going to have to figure this out for the next brew. For this batch, Matt and I are both taking 3 gallons. We're going to try different yeasts. I'm trying the Imperial Darkness. When the beer is ready, we'll sit down and compare the two. So just a quick recap of the first brew day of the year. I think it was a success. I hit my gravity readings. It looks like a stout. It smells like a stout. I think it's going to be a great beer. Now for the Anvil Foundry. I did run into some problems, but I think it was more user error and not being familiar with the system. I did run into a few clogged pumps. I found the temperature readings during the mash were a little inconsistent, and I did read the instructions midway through the mash, so I am still learning the system. I think in the long run, it's going to work out just fine for what I'm going to use it for. But for the question I had, did I make a mistake putting time and money into a HERMS system? And the answer is no. I'm still going to use the system behind me as my primary brewing system. The all-in-one system is not going to replace it. I have some upcoming videos that I'm going to be posting. I'm still working on my kegerator build. If you saw me mention that in a previous video, I'm going to have that posted soon. I'm also going to go into a little bit more depth of my glycol control panel. And if you haven't done already, subscribe. And if you like what you're viewing, give me a thumbs up and I'll see you in the next video.